Will Gervonta Tank Davis ever be the same fighter coming off that draw decision against Lamont Roach? A lot of people are questioning and are skeptical about whether or not he's going to be the same fighter. Will we ever see these knockout stellar performances again? And I think a lot of it has to do with his level of concentration, honestly. Tank's a tremendous fighter. He's a tremendous talent, no matter what people say. He gets a lot of criticism for, and some of it's valid. I mean, they talk about the weight draining, they talk about rehydration clauses, they say he's the A side, so he gets to do stuff, gets away with some stuff like taking a knee. Obviously that was the big talk of the Lamont Roach fight, and I feel like Tank is still that great talent. He's the cash cow of the sport of boxing alongside Canelo Alvarez, maybe a little bit behind him, but he's right there as well. Everybody loves to watch Tank fight. He came to Brooklyn and obviously, you know, was a sellout arena, and he's definitely one of the biggest draws in the sport of boxing. Tank is a top 3 draw in the sport of boxing, and I feel like he deserves that credit because he's put on the stellar performances, but how legitimate is that knockout power is what a lot of people want to know, and a lot of people are questioning it now, especially after that Lamont Roach fight, because people are saying, you're telling me you brought a guy from 30 to fight you at 35 and still you weren't able to knock him out, when that's not the only factor. You guys got to look at it. Lamont Roach has a strong amateur pedigree. He's an experienced fighter as well. Even though he's at 130, you guys got to take into account going up to 35, you feel even better because you don't have to cut those extra 5 pounds. Even though you guys may think, hey, what's 5 pounds? It does make a big difference in the sport of boxing. People need to understand that. And I feel like Tank, obviously, he seemed like he was off. You know, he didn't look like the same fighter, and people can say that Tank looked the same, he just didn't get that knockout. But if you ask me, you know, Tank looked distracted. He wasn't ready to, you know, answer as fast. He wasn't able to step on that gas as fast as he, you know, could have and should have, in my opinion. I feel like the next fight, he's going to have to start fighting with a sense of urgency early on, or else, you know, Lamont Roach is going to end up winning the rematch. And I feel like Tank, this is an opportunity for him to win. And I feel like this is an opportunity for him to potentially stop Lamont Roach, because now he doesn't have the excuse of saying the hair grease, because that's going to be changed. That has to be, you know, out of the picture. He should just shave his head and not have to worry about it anymore. That's one thing. And then obviously he's been, you know, rumored to be working with some other guys. I don't know what his corner situation is going to be in the rematch, but he needs to get that straightened out. That's number 2. And I feel like if he's able to do that, he's already in a great position to win the rematch. And those are very minor changes in addition to what he actually has to do in the ring. And I feel like against Lamont Roach, as good as Lamont is and as good as he did against Tank in that fight, you know, really shocked me in a lot of the boxing world with how impressive he was. I feel like the room for improvement for Tank is much greater, and if he's able to make those adjustments, you can expect Tank to knock out Lamont. And that's a big if, because Tank has to make the adjustments. You know, Tank has talked a lot about retirement. His head obviously hasn't been in the sport of boxing, and it has to be against the best in the world. And Lamont Roach, despite what people say, even though he was a not known name to many people, you know, prior to the Tank fight, you got to give respect to Tank, because this was a slept on opponent, and Tank knows how good Lamont is. And ultimately, you know, it ended up being a draw, but Tank had a difficult time with it because, like, Lamont's a very credible fighter, and at the end of the day, Tank didn't have that motivation to really beat Lamont. He was just like, it's another day in the office. I should be able to handle this, you know, with one hand tied behind my back. But it wasn't that kind of fight. Lamont came with fire, and I feel like in a rematch, Tank is going to have to change and reevaluate his game plan and his mindset. He's going to have to be focused. He's going to be, he needs to be locked in, you know, 100% focused on Lamont Roach, and he has to have that fire, you know, the fire that he had against Rolly Romero, the fire that he had against Frank Martin. He has to want to hurt his opponent. You know, if you're fighting a guy that used to be your friend, psychologically, what's your why? You know, why would you want to stop this guy? What's your reason for wanting to punish him and make sure that, you know, he can't feed his kids? You know, that's the level of intensity that Tank needs to get, you know, in order to win this rematch. Otherwise, there's a good chance that Lamont Roach could beat him again, and then, you know, where does Tank go from there? But if Tank makes all the right adjustments, it's hard for me to, you know, see him losing to Lamont Roach, in my opinion. That's just my opinion, but let me know down below what you guys think. I got Tank in a Lamont Roach rematch, but thank you guys for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys on the next NAS Boxing video. Peace.